The ship currently run at 18 knot per hour. So that means around 21 mile per hour. So 15 knot per hour become 17 mile. So 18 knot, that means about 21 mile per hour ship run. The temperature outside, let's see how the temperature outside here. Oh, they don't say the temperature. Okay. Now it's on 34 a.m. Uh, on February 21st, 2022. The ship outside in the ocean, outside Panama. We go to Panama, we reach Panama tomorrow.
And put them in the little woods right next to the area of the terminal. Well, it started growing from there. It's now a reserve. They actually have what's called the cotton top tamarin. They are actually breeding them there. There are hundreds of birds. There are monkeys that sometimes visit. Okay. They're wild. They come in, howler monkeys, squirrel monkeys. The tamarin also, as I said, are there. I've seen sloth there. They have Pecari pigs. I'll show you a lot of photos in a moment. But it is something you'll be able to enjoy whilst you're there. Now, a little bit of a warning in a way. I had one woman, we were on a ship from Australia. She was in, one of the macaws jumped on her shoulder. She stood there for her friend to take a photo, and the macaw ate her blue topaz earring. Oh! And I'm not kidding on that. Wow! There was also a small troop of capuchin monkeys. There's one there now, and he's adopted by the howler monkeys. The capuchin monkeys were very mischievous. They would try to get into people's bags and steal stuff. Well, they kind of signed their warrant to be taken somewhere else. They didn't like the head of customs. There was a ship being berthed there coming in and out of a cruise ship about 3 years ago. And what this troop of monkeys did, they stole every one of his passport stamps. Oh, my God. They hid them in the trees. So they've been taken to a different reserve. Now we're talking about Colombia, about 51 million people residing in the country. Wow. Within the old walls itself, there's about 1 million people. When you take in the parameters of the whole city, you're looking about 3 million people. We're berthed about 300 yards from the Casa de Cruceros, the House of Cruises. There will be, for those mobility difficulties, a small bus that will shuttle you that 300 yards. You're about a 15 to 30 minute ride from the walled city. Now, the reason I say that, there are smaller roads and traffic. Normally, if it's not that bad of traffic, it's a 15, it's about 3 miles in distance in that way. We're on Thursday the 24th. We're scheduled 10 o'clock until 4:30. Currency is the Colombian peso, but they do accept in most places US dollars, have the smaller denominations. Now it's 3,900 pesos to the dollar, 3,010 to the Canadian dollar, 4,450 to the euro, 5,350 to the pound. Banks, they're open Monday through Friday, so we have no problem that way. 8 o'clock to 11:30. They shut and then they reopen at 2 o'clock through 4:30. Shopping, there's vendors right in the terminal. So there's no problem about that way. Great little souvenirs, I'll show you a few. Then also on the streets within the old walled city, there's numerous vendors. And I'm gonna tell you right now, if you own a pair of sunglasses and you have a hat, wear them. Because if not, you're gonna have people constantly coming up to try to sell you a hat and a pair of sunglasses. Now, the language, of course, is Spanish, English spoken within the areas of the tourists that way. What I recommend if you're going to get a taxi, make sure you talk to the person. They do have the command of English, so you can have a little bit of information. Yeah. The taxis, right outside the Casa de Correzo, there is a fare guideline normally at the entrance. Now, that way, the old city for a taxi, up to $20 per taxi each way. If you can bargain, sometimes you can get it down a little bit less. Rent-a-cars, if you're very brave, and I would think a little foolish also, you would rent a car here. It is a very congested area. The people here drive like Rome and other places, but they never look behind them. They only worry about what's in front of them. So if you drove like you drove back home and looked like that, you're in an accident. So I don't really recommend driving in this area. Post office, they originally populated this area of Colombia. These Indians mostly resided in the mountains of Colombia. This was long before the Europeans came to America. The Chivas were a very advanced civilization. They're now referred to, as I mentioned before, as a pre-Columbian, prior Christopher Columbus. They were excellent miners, and they were phenomenal goldsmiths also. Unfortunately, it was these traits that did lead to their downfall. The explorers, they came in, they killed and they plundered these Indians for their emeralds and their gold. In 1533, it was Don Pedro Herrera. He was the founder of the city of Cartagena. He named the city from where he hailed from, and many of his crew on his boat hailed from, Cartagena, Spain. Now you had here in the 16th century, through that area was ruled by a group of viceroys of systems. Now the conquistadors, they found the area, as I mentioned, rich in gold and emeralds. They had also all the other goods from South America coming in. But therefore, the ships didn't have to go around the bottom of South America. They could go take across the area, Isthmus of Panama, have one, there was a small fort area they stored, but the big area was Cartagena. They bring it down in that way. It was stored here that way, but this invited many attacks by different pirates in that way. Now what happens is Spain would send a very large fleet over, basically a convoy of ships, protect against pirate attacks. They would do this twice a year to conduct a trade with the colonies. Now they would stop on the way out from the area of Spain in the Canary Islands off the coast of Africa. They would cross the Atlantic. They split into two groups. One would head to the area of Veracruz, Mexico, the other to Cartagena, and a few would go to what's called Portobello, Panama. Now, on their return journey, all the vessels would meet up once again in Havana, Cuba, and they'd make their return voyage, stopping in the area of the Canary Islands and normally coming into the port of Cadiz. Now, what happens? They needed to protect whilst they were waiting for the fleets to come here. King Felipe II, he ordered a protective wall to be constructed around the city. Now, what you're going to find also, what I find very interesting, you're going to find the roads very narrow, very crooked, and twists and turns. You're going to think you're going in one direction, you're going to wind up coming back to where you were. This was done deliberately. But what happens if a force was able to get into the city, the locals know where the twists and turns are. The invading force doesn't. And also, so it's so narrow, they cannot come in a line. So they could go to an area where they know the roads would come out and they could pick off the people coming in. So you have that deliberately made at this time. Now, even with the defenses, Cartagena into the harbor of Cartagena. What he did was very interesting with all those defenses. He remained in the harbor for 2 months, and he had a bargaining with what he would take as a ransom. Now, most of the people seeing his fleet get past the defenses, they went to another area called Tobacco. Now, what happens? Drake wanted to put, after 2 months, a little bit of pressure on the people here. He burnt down over 200 houses, and then he took his cannon and he took off the brand new top of the cathedral from the city and area that way. He then accepted a ransom, 107,000 pieces of gold, almost a half ton of gold. Now that was about $33 million in today's prices. But also when he went in and burnt the houses down, he also looked around the town and what he liked. So he said, I want the church bells. I want that woman's jewelry. And he took everything he wanted in that way. So then the walls were built up a little heavier. They were completed in 1686. Now you're looking at some of these walls 60 feet thick to withstand cannons from the ships in that way. Now, Spain outlaid over 59 million ounces of gold to construct the wall. And it was done with the forced labor of slaves. So it was just the materials and that to get all the materials that way. You're looking at $2 trillion in today's costs to build the walls around the city. Although, for them, it turned out to be a good investment. But it said, and I found this very funny, one of the guides, and I did look it up, and I found it is true, they say. It said when King Felipe II was told the total cost of the structure of the wall, he went out in his balcony and stood there. And he turned around and said, for that much money, I should be able to see it from here. Now, you also had construction of a main fortress, a very beautiful building to this day, and that's called San Felipe de Barras. That began in 1657. Now that towers, that's outside the walls. Interior, it towers above the city about 135 feet. Now, very interesting, it was captured in that way, and it was destroyed. And that was back in 1697, and that was during the 9-Year War. What happens? They built it, they put every cannon facing the sea. The French came in from land. There wasn't one cannon facing. So the French were able to overrun it that way. In 1741, England attacked again, this time with a England was able to successfully defend itself from this powerful invasion. But an interesting factor, Lawrence Washington was so impressed by Admiral Vernon that him and his half-brother George named their estate Mount Vernon. You also had here other forts which I mentioned on the water to protect the area of the city in that way. Now, also between the two forts will sail through. You have to imagine at that time, they had an iron chain that would go from one fort to the other. So they could totally blockade the entrance to the port in that way. Now, the fortress that way of the San Felipe, rebuilt between 1762 and 1769. To me, one of the most impressive structures in all of Cartagena in that way. Now, on November 11th, 1811, Cartagena declared its independence from Spain. This was a long revolt and a long siege. It was recaptured by Spanish loyalists under Pedro Morello, 1815. You did have that brief period of independence. They are still very proud of to this day. They call it La Heroica, or the heroic city. It was later in 1819, Simon Bolivar, he led his heroic attack, and Cartagena and Colombia were liberated for all. They celebrate this every November 11th. Now also, you have here huge parades, and the whole area shuts down for 2 or 3 days when they do their independence. Now you also have another feast. I'm going to be showing you a building called La Popa, and this is the Virgin of Candelara. And they do a feast every February 2nd. It's up on a high hill, and they do this at night with everybody holding candles going up to the convent. Absolutely stunning thing to see. Now you did have here the 80s to 2000, the tourist infrastructure. I'm going to show you in a few moments a place called Gethsemane. Back in the 80s and 90s, I would stand and tell people when I was cruise director, do not go there. Now, I'm going to tell you, please go there. It is the Bohemian section. That way there's artists, murals, just absolutely stunning. They've transformed this area unbelievably. So here we are going to go through here. Remember, you will need your, here we are, we'll go back. You have the map markings. This is what it looks like from the top of the ship. You can actually see it away. It's about 3 miles. But look at how imposing that is. Here's your coming up your ticket stand. And then you get to walk the outer walls. You can see there Boca Grande in the distance. You have the old city right onto the right of that. And you got all different chambers, go down into the powder rooms. Now this is something that
All right.
Now it's time to say goodbye to all company. Hear my sea, very wide. Why? Because we like you.
Right. Oh, bravo! Thank you.
Aren't you glad you got your song in there?
Yeah, I can tell. Thank you for that.
That's a fun song.
Many parts of the brain. Tampering with the serotonin system is, in a sense, like loosening our biological brake.
In 1958, the Swiss chemist Albert It seemed to speed up the process. You could give small doses of LSD in a typical shrink's office, and over the course of several weeks, do several years' work.
They learn that both the patient's moods and the setting in which the drug is administered have enormous effects on the patient's reactions. The drug seems to amplify everything.
You want to have a safe, supportive setting with beautiful aesthetic objects around, music and so forth. And set the setting all right, you have the guidance and the assistance of others who are more experienced. Then you have the potential for really understanding how your mind works.
A new word is coined by Dr. Humphrey Osmond to describe drugs like LSD and mescaline. Psychedelic. It means mind manifesting, suggesting that drugs do not produce a predictable sequence of events, but instead bring to the surface thoughts and feelings from the subconscious. By the late 1950s, psychedelic therapy is the hot topic in the mental health community. Many who undergo it experience changes in personality, religious and philosophical beliefs, and sometimes lifestyle. In Hollywood, therapists make the drug available to a wide variety of celebrities, including Cary Grant, singer, dancer, actor Rita Moreno, and composer Andre Bremen, and even Time Life publisher Henry Luce. Grant, who reportedly takes more than 100 LSD trips, claims LSD is the only therapy he's tried that gives him peace of mind. So,